We have Ms. Cheryl Nelms, General Manager Project Delivery for Metro Vancouver, joining us virtually. We also have Jerry Dobrolvony, the Commissioner for Metro Vancouver. Welcome to both of you. I'm glad, Mr. Dobrolvony, that you were here for our discussion about housing. I think you hear that there's a very strong commitment from the District Council to partner with Metro Vancouver on a project going forward. Fortuitous for us to have you holding on the line.
Thank you very much, Your Worship and members of Council. Yes, I have been listening and I've been taking notes and I appreciate it. It was good discussion. Good evening. Before we start, I'd like to begin in a good way by acknowledging the respective and shared territories of the 10 First Nations in this region, particularly the Tsleil-Waututh and the Squamish Nations. And given that we're all online and in different parts of the region, we would also like to acknowledge all the other First Nations on whose territories we're located and wish to thank them as well for making this meeting possible. Well, thank you very much. I'm joined by Cheryl Nelms, as I said, who is the General Manager of Project Delivery at Metro Vancouver. And tonight we wanted to give you an overview of and an update on the North Shore Wastewater Treatment Plant. So as you'll recall, the Metro Vancouver liquid waste system, we have 4 areas, separate areas, 5 sewage treatment plants. The largest 2 are Anasis and Iona. They carry about 80% of the liquid waste, 40% each, and the remaining 20% is in the 3 remaining liquid waste treatment plants. Lionsgate is the existing plant to be replaced by the North Shore Wastewater Treatment Plant. Next slide. So it's a very large project and a very exciting project. Because we're looking to upgrade from primary treatment to tertiary treatment. And there's growing concern, not only growing population in the North Shore, but also growing concern around the level of treatment and the impact it has on the marine environment and the marine ecosystem. We recently had a presentation or a demonstration at the P&E. We had thousands and thousands of people come through our displays at the P&E. And related to liquid waste, we received about 5 times the amount of input, 5 to 1, stressing that their number 1 top of mind concern around liquid waste was the impact on the ecological and environmental impacts of our liquid waste treatment plants. So there's strong support in the community for upgrading, as you've heard and as you know, for upgrading our plants to tertiary treatment. And now I'll turn it over to Cheryl to talk a little bit more in detail about the plant and where we are in this update. Cheryl?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Through the chair, this program that Jerry's just mentioned comprises 3 key projects, and we'll walk through 2 of them, the wastewater treatment plant and the conveyance project today. The third element is the design and decommissioning. When we look at the aerial for the area, just to orient the council, Lionsgate Bridge is here on the west side. This is the existing plant that's just beside the Lionsgate Bridge. You can see the outfall that goes into Burrard Inlet. And the new plant is over here on right at the corner of West 1st Avenue and Phillips Avenue. And that's what we call the North Shore Treatment Plant project. And from there, there's we call the conveyance project, which is effectively 2 7-foot diameter pipes that are going along this alignment, this pink alignment, to a new pump station that's right underneath the Lionsgate treatment plant. So this gives you the context of the program of work from an aerial perspective. And I'll walk you through the treatment plant first, and this is just an aerial, just looking in at some of the construction stage here. We're just building out this digester. This is on the west side of the plant. And this was built as a conical structure. You can see the formwork in here. It's a really complicated piece of work and lots of rebar put in place. And I'll walk you through some of we have a drone video to sort of show what that looks like right now, because as construction has progressed. When we get this plant at the end, it's going to have some fantastic features. It's going to have, it's going to move us from primary treatment to tertiary, which is going beyond our regulatory requirement of secondary, but it's getting us that tertiary treatment that we know will be coming down the line from a regulatory perspective. soon, and is a much needed requirement for the quality of the effluent that we're looking into to put into our water systems. There is going to be a pretty modern looking building that you'll see. So it looks more like an office type of facility than just basic concrete bunker type of structure. It's just based on that there was early planning to be able to do this with a lot of community input with neighbors and businesses in the area, and it'll be constructed to LEED. There's a public plaza as part of the amenity, and a district energy system with the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the area, or for the project and for the local area in its development with Lonsdale Energy. So why tertiary? Jerry just walked through the key elements from a public perspective in terms of their level of interest, and it has the highest concern from our liquid waste portfolio. We're really looking at that as a need to be able to reduce those harmful pollutants that go into our habitat, our aquatic habitat, and impact salmon, our salmon killer whales, and other aspects, and effectively the oxygen that's taking up that oxygen that's needed for those species. In terms of where we're at in terms of the project, it is a complex project, and I'll walk you through a drone video that we have. But this orangey sort of shaded area is the project site. It's approximately 8 acres. It's a very tight site. It's a small site relative to what would traditionally be housing a wastewater treatment plant. Usually they're spread out, have lots more land available to be able to build out on. It is close to the waterfront. That's normal for a wastewater treatment plant, just basically due to the need for proximity for an outfall system and an existing distribution system that this is connecting to. But being close to the waterfront and being in British Columbia with our seismic standards as they are, it does make there be complications for meeting the geotechnical requirements for a site like this, and with some elements being post-disaster requirement ready. There was an aggressive schedule on this project from the beginning, and which created some challenges for the contractor to be able to meet, although they were in the contract that they had signed up for. When we took a look at the guts of this building, it is very complicated. This is what we call a building information model. So it's developed in the early phases of design and carried through the design to help also through construction for the different disciplines across engineering and architectural to be working together. You can see in here lots of the piping works that's in here. We're talking over 75 kilometers of electrical conduit that's in here. We're talking about thousands of kilometers of piping to be able to service this. And one of the first stacked wastewater treatment plants in Canada. So quite complicated because of that site and the need for tertiary and secondary treatment for this type of aspects of it. And I think I'll just move on to the drone video and walk you through it. If you like construction, you'll like this drone video, I think. And I'll just stop sharing and move to that as we go through. Please bear with me. And so we really want to share with you this video because it does show the progress on the construction site. This is a bird's eye view of what's going on. We have a lot more access to this. We're talking right now, this is the corner of West First Avenue and Phillips Avenue. And you can see this is the digesters that I showed you in that earlier picture. So you now can see that the concrete's now poured on those structures. Before you saw just the formwork and the rebar sort of in that earlier picture that I showed you at the very beginning. There's approximately, on the size of this, for this 8-acre site, we have about 5 tower cranes, lots of mobile cranes that are located here. As we move along here, you can see a lot of concrete, a lot of rebar being placed, a lot of foundations work for our substructure mostly complete at this point. So we're right now here, we're passing through primary treatment, and we're getting into the activated sludge area where there's bioreactors and tertiary treatment for carrying out all of the necessary digestion and works of getting those little bits of solids down into less that goes out into our effluent. And then we're getting into here, these are our secondary clarifiers. And you can see here, this is where we're going to have a stacked secondary clarifier system for the site. You can see alongside an active railway, and if you've worked around railway systems and rail providers, they're very challenging to work with. So it is challenging from that side, but again, things that were well known by our contractor. There's 8 clarifiers on one level for a total of 16 clarifiers, and so that's where the stacked aspect of this project comes into place. We're coming close now to the district energy location. You can see some workers right here on the job site, and then we're going to be entering into the office space for the facility and public plaza. So this is where our current site offices are for the contractor and Metro Vancouver and consultants, co-located together. And at a high level, I think this just gives a very good bird's eye view of what's going on, some progress of what's going on for the job site. Peak periods, we had over 300 people on the job site. Right now, we're under 200 people on the job site. So I'll just stop sharing that for a second and go back to our PowerPoint. So very good progress in general on the treatment plant for a complicated project, but still it is behind schedule. We know that it's that there has been challenges with that contractor with respect to schedule and delivery. On the conveyance side of the program of work, this project has been on schedule, has been working out very well. This is a picture of the completed pump station that lies right below the Lionsgate Bridge. So you can see the piers of the Lionsgate Bridge right here on the part of the picture, the green roof. And there, there's a big substructure underneath this plant. So there's a lot below the surface here that you can't see, but works that were required to build this pump station. An interesting aspect about this project that has been very successful, specifically for the conveyance project, has been the addition in our procurement requirements for requirement of number of hours for hiring members of the Squamish Nation. That has been very successful. There was 2 components to that procurement requirement for the contractor. One was on employment hours, and the other aspect was employment of for apprenticeship hours. So we've been able to exceed some of those performance targets, and so that has been a very successful piece of this program and this specific project that we're taking lessons learned to apply onto other projects. Current work there's more work that's happening along First Avenue. You'll see, as when we can carry out these projects in our member municipalities, we do recognize significant impacts to the public, to businesses, the noise, the traffic. These are things that we really do care about. We've been working alongside the DNV staff to be able to mitigate as much as possible. But there's also just an aspect of reality of the project that some of this noise and traffic will happen as anticipated in the planning process. But one of the benefits coming out of this is there will be another greenway that will be alongside here, bike paths, lighting enhancement along this alignment, which will improve safety for pedestrians and cars that will be traveling along that alignment. Upcoming work, lots of work still to continue on both the plant project. As I mentioned, we are behind schedule on that project based on the contractor's low productivity rates. For some of the specific actions that would be of interest, we're preparing to pave First Street over the next few months, and then we're finalizing that commissioning of the pump station. And work is continuing on the outfall of that piping work that you would have seen in with that pinky purple line on that from that aerial. And like I said, construction of the plant continues. So I'll pass it back over to Jerry and let him wrap up our presentation to give you an update on this project.
Thanks, Cheryl. So just in summary, as you've heard, I mean, it's a very large project. It's a very complex project, and it's a difficult project to construct. And the contractor is definitely having difficulties. As you know, the project is significantly behind schedule and over budget, and we're working hard to try to resolve the issues with the contractor, and those negotiations, discussions continue. We're happy to come back and provide updates. We've committed to update the board monthly, and we're happy to come back either at your request or when we have significant changes to report back on. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, GM Nelms. I'll be moving receipt of the delegation. Is there a second for that? Councillor Muri. Okay, just my own comments on the matter. I sit on the Liquid Waste Committee for Metro Vancouver. These are incredibly complex projects, and the way we've done them in the past is no longer acceptable. The primary removal of solids, the very minimal efforts to treat the outfall are not acceptable anymore. And so we've made a commitment as a society to build a more complex process, one that will have less detrimental effect to the ecological environment in the area, but it does mean that it's a very complex facility to construct and also adapt to the old system through this conveyance project that has to take place. In the end, I think that the benefits will be clear. It will both permit, it'll accommodate future development in the community with that capacity for liquid wastewater treatment in the process, and also will minimize the environmental impact of the outfall from our sewage. As I look forward to the completion of the project. I get that this is going to be a closed facility in the sense that it's not open air like Anasis, where when you're driving over the Patello Bridge, or sorry, on the east-west connector there, it opens your eyes, that's for sure, because sometimes there is a smell. This is a closed facility and should not have that same kind of impact. So I'm, similar to, I believe it's Kelowna is another one that has a fully closed space in it. So this is the modern way to build these facilities, and it all has the lowest environmental impact that we can make it, considering it's handling the waste for a massive amount of the population. So I don't envy the challenges you're going to have working through the completion of the project. Some of those challenges are great, but I just want to let you know that we are supportive of the project and look forward to seeing it through to its completion. Councillor Muri?
Thank you, Mayor Little, and thank you, Mr. Dobrolvony and Ms. Nelms, for the presentation. I'm the district's rep on the board for Metro Vancouver, and we have obviously periodic updates in regards to all of our projects. Certainly this one is a challenging one, as Mr. Dobrolvony has pointed out. I think we are in very good hands. It's helpful when your CAO and your obviously your project delivery team are engineers and understand the complexities and the challenges behind some of these projects. I'm sure the team is also looking forward to the completion of this project, and we're grateful to the board for the support that they gave to the district's position in regards to adding the tertiary later in this project. And when Mr. Dobrolvony came on board as CAO, he was supportive of that, and staff were supportive of that. And for that, we're grateful that we were able to add that addition to the project at that time. So I just have full confidence in how this project is being handled. Thanks again for your presentation. And I think it's very helpful for the community to have periodic updates being brought to councils, just to give everybody an opportunity to know where the project is. We drive by it. It's right in the middle of our community. We see it all the time. I would also add, we've had very few complaints from the local residents. I have checked with the local community association in Norgate. We have had, unfortunately, some situations where, we do everything we can to be able to mitigate the sound, but on a project like this, it is, very challenging. And we know that through our infrastructure projects as well, but staff have been very responsive. Obviously, we can't address all of those situations all of the time, but staff have done their very best to be able to communicate with any resident that is finding it difficult to deal with the noise and try to mitigate that to the best of their ability. But really, I've had very, very few calls in regards to complaints. And so thank you again to the project team for being so responsive to the ones that have come in. And we look forward to it coming to completion. And we also look forward to the next update that Mr. Dobrolvony will be able to give us. And thank you very much to Ms. Nelms.
Thank you.
Next speaker I have is Councillor Bond, followed by Councillors Forbes and Curren. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I think one point that was mentioned was along with the complexity of this project and the site constraints and this being a new type of structure being built here in Metro Vancouver. I'm wondering what changes Metro Vancouver has made within their own or thoughts towards changes around procurement strategy, around the internal controls, level of supervision and oversight that Metro Vancouver staff have on a project like this. This is a large project. It's over $1 billion, but there is a much larger project coming up in Metro Vancouver with the Iona wastewater treatment plant, which is likely to be an order of magnitude more expensive than this one. And so, looking forward to that. I think it would be useful for councils, not just ours, but those around the region and the member municipalities or the member jurisdictions of Metro Vancouver to understand what changes, what proactive things Metro is doing right now to ensure that on the next project that we're a lot closer, either by using a different procurement method to keep things closer on schedule and on budget, especially on a project of such a large scale.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Through the chair, you touched on a number of the things that we've been doing. Number one was we reorganized and we created our project delivery department, which serves as a center of excellence for the organization on our largest and most complex projects. Cheryl is, I like to say, one of the best in the business. She came from the federal government. She led the federal government's programs. She has worked on provincial projects and also came from City of Vancouver, where she set up a center of excellence there as well for project delivery. We report directly to a Metro committee, the Finance and Intergov Committee, and have regular milestone meetings and project gateway decisions. So there's in our project delivery framework, there's specific thresholds and decision points that come on all of these projects. We did that because we identified that we've got very, very large capital programs at Metro, and it's one of the biggest risks we face as an organization. Our overall budget is about $2.5 billion a year. $1.5 billion of that is our capital works, and they're very large projects. As you said, they span many, many years. And so it's critical that we continue to look at the most effective ways of delivering them. One thing that's come as a part of COVID and part of our economic development strategy that we're moving forward with region-wide is looking at how we can break up some of these very large projects into a way that the local industry can compete more effectively on them. There was a thinking, I like to say, over the years, the pendulum swings back and forth, and there was a thinking, a decade or so ago, that we bundle these up into very, very large projects, get economies of scale. But we've also seen with those very, very large projects that there's the potential for very large problem as well and risk. And in fact, the international market is quite concerned about taking on that kind of risk now. So you're not really getting those best pricing. But if we can break up the projects so that local companies are better suited to compete for them and have maximized the local benefits from that spend. I think we're all a lot better off. So that's part of our work now. And also partnerships. I talked about just the local construction industry, but also partnerships with First Nations. You heard Cheryl mention, the many partnerships with Squamish, as we're looking at Iona, partnership with Musqueam, as we're looking at work on the Coquitlam watershed, partnering with First Nations there. So it is part of our mantra now as we look at our major projects. How can we partner with not only the local community, but also First Nations? So with that, and Cheryl, anything that I left out that you want to cover?
Covered a lot there, Jerry. I think the only added piece that we could add is that on the governance piece is absolutely critical. We have to have the right team, both our consultant team, that's our owner's advisory team, but also our own team. And then there's the governance. And so one piece that Jerry hasn't mentioned is that we've got an expert advisory panel now on deck, and it is sort of the cream of the crop who we would talk to on big infrastructure projects who've delivered these over the last 30 years for across the country and have been involved in these some of the problematic projects or the good projects that have happened for our projects. And that's a group that I have direct access to and that I meet monthly with, and in some cases on an even more regular basis to seek advice and even participate on our project. For in this case, for the North Shore Wastewater Treatment Plant program, we have one of the expert panel members who's an ex-GM of Hewitt. He's on our expert advisory panel, but is also helping us on the costing aspect of one of our projects.
That's great to hear, and it is quite comforting to notice that Metro Vancouver is learning and adapting to the situation as it comes up. We've had a similar kind of expert advisory panel for a long time. It was formerly known as the Community Monitoring and Advisory Committee, CMAC, which helped interface with some of the major Metro Vancouver projects in the District of North Vancouver, specifically Capilano water main project. But that committee has been shifted into our major projects and infrastructure advisory committee, which is again kind of we are I guess lucky in North Vancouver that there's a lot of those top industry engineering and project management individuals that do happen to live here, and so I think having that kind of outside expert advice accessible to your team is a great thing. So thank you.
And I'll also say we borrow best practices from our member municipalities when we see what they're doing as well. So yes, that didn't go unnoticed by us that you had that your own expert panel.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it and getting updated on it. I know it's been difficult. The cost and the budget and timing has been extremely difficult. So it's good to hear, as Councillor Bond just said, that there are some changes that have been made so that you're more adaptable the next time. I just wanted to say thank you for doing tertiary. I became aware of that about 4 years ago through Save Our Shores, through the Stream Keepers, and was stunned to find out how our old system was working. So I was proactive in pushing as much as I could in the citizenry here to understand what changing that to tertiary meant, and ran on that, as a matter of fact, in the election, that's what my stance was. So I just want to really thank you that the environment is much better off, the people are much better off, the marine life is going to be healthier now, less particulates going into the bay. The orcas are going to be happier. The air quality of the air for the people to breathe is going to be better. So I just really want to thank you for doing that. I appreciate it very much. And I know it wasn't a cheap project to take on, because I campaigned on Victoria's project and where that came in. So a little bit different, but I just really, really want to thank you on behalf of an awful lot of the citizens that you went to tertiary. So thank you very much.
Thank you, very kind words. It's one of those examples, I think, where we see sometimes where the public's ahead of us and we have to catch up. And that was a good example.
Thank you.
Councillor Curren, please.
Thanks for the update. Yes, tertiary was certainly the way to go. I remember that coming up, and we did have lots of folks in our community that were strong advocates for that. So thanks to them for pushing that through. Just want to talk for a brief moment about this is something an architect shared with me, just sort of looking at how we've built our systems, and he said we've built everything to discharge into nature somewhere, whether it's pollution into the air, pollution into the water. And so waste certainly is one of those things. We've created these systems that discharge into nature somewhere. And then obviously the cumulative impacts from that are not something that we can do forever. So, and these projects have become so big, as we found. And so as we look to the future of energy, it's localized, it's community energy, it's obviously renewable. So is there a way to go in a completely different direction? I mean, living buildings now are buildings so that all waste is managed on site. Nothing gets discharged into the environment. I know that there's going to be a place where we're in between this, going perhaps backwards and forwards. But I mean, do you see the future of this region going smaller in terms of waste and energy? And I guess I also just had a question generally about, are we maximizing the energy recovery? I think the city of North Vancouver is going to be beneficiary of some energy from here. But yeah, just that looking to the future, and I'm sure as I see all that big concrete and everything, I just think, is this really the way forward? That's it.
No, thank you for that question through the chair. It's an excellent point, and the short answer is yes, that we are transitioning to doing work very differently. It's also a gradual transition. And you're quite right that, historically we even captured, surface water and put it into pipes and built pipes instead of streams and created a much more of an engineered environment. And certainly we're moving very, very strongly in a different direction now. In terms of stormwater, we're looking at green infrastructure projects. How do we get as much of that water into the ground as we can, allowing the ground to filter it and purify it and do it more naturally? Now that depends on what parts of the region. There's some parts of the region where that can work very effectively. There's some parts on the North Shore where there's a lack of soil. It's quite rocky, and there isn't the ability to have the ground and the soil filter. There's also some lower elevation areas that are marshy and are not able to receive the water. But certainly we're looking at different ways of using much more natural systems. In terms of waste, we're looking at waste as a resource now. And so we talked about district energy, taking the heat out of our system. Just so you know, our whole sewer system throughout the region has enough heat to heat over 700 high-rise towers. It could reduce greenhouse gases by over 275,000 tons per year. So we're looking, the board has passed a policy to say, look, let's make that heat available, not just in the North Shore, but all throughout the region for other partners that are interested in building district energy. So we're looking at using that a lot more. Methane gas at the Lulu Island treatment plant. Now we've partnered with Fortis. They're scrubbing the gas and putting it back into the Fortis system as renewable natural gas. We also have a research project where we're able to convert biosolids into a bio-crude, and then a partnership with Parkland Refineries who refine the bio-crude into a biodiesel fuel. So able to convert the biosolids into a biodiesel. And now we're just trying to bring that up to scale. We're able to do it in the laboratory on the bench, and we're trying to bring it up to scale right now. In the absence of that, we use biosolids. 98% of them are used beneficially. We're currently reclaiming an old rock quarry gravel pit in the valley that's using biosolids to bring back green and growth. So the last unfortunate piece, I would say, is it is a slow transition. Many of the buildings that are built now, will have a life expectancy of 40, 60 plus years. And so they were built and plumbed in a certain way. We're looking at green roofs and looking at bioswales and different ways of treating water, but that'll be a gradual process as buildings are rebuilt. But thank you for the question. It is a really important focus of the work we do. Treating waste is a resource in all of our operations.
Thank you. And what will the capacity be when this is, like, I didn't know that the largest, I think, is Chicago's 1.44 billion gallons a day. What, I'm wondering, I mean, I know the last plant was built in 1961. So like, what are we imagining the future of volume of waste being for the North Shore treatment?
So I'll let Cheryl answer the volume number. One of the things we are doing is using this transition as a way of dealing with growth. As we take more and more of the stormwater out of the system, as we have more water efficient features, as we look at other techniques, then we can reduce the flow per capita into the system. But as we have population growth, that will hopefully prevent us from having to build many more treatment plants. But Cheryl, can you comment on the actual flows?
Sure. We design in two ways, like for two types of flows. We have average wet weather flow rate, which is 320 megaliters per day. That's effectively that, and that is the higher part that we are at with this new treatment plant will be our average dry weather flow, which is at 130 megaliters per day. So that is high. It's allowing for greater population size and growth in the area, even given the conservation opportunities that we have in our developments, in our actions, and our behaviors. We still need to be able to prepare for that population growth increase.
So in our budget process next year, next year, in our budget process for next year, which is in October, so next month, we have two initiatives there related to linking our budget to conservation. One is to continue, having the higher peak water charge in the summertime and continuing to escalate that. And also a question for the board around liquid waste flows, and have a separate charge for wet weather flow versus dry weather flow, which over time would slowly provide more of an incentive to get more of that wet weather out of the pipe system.
Okay, thank you very much. And just for people who don't get that reference, there are still portions of the Lower Mainland where storm is combined with sanitary. And so that's not really the case for the District of North Vancouver, but some municipalities in the Lower Mainland still have a combined system. And so we're treating water that is largely runoff and rainwater, and as well as sanitary, which we obviously want to disincentivize over time. Thank you very much for your presentation, Council. We have the delegation has been moved and seconded. We'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much for the update. We always appreciate the communications back and forth with the municipality. And sorry we kept you again so long, but it's an important topic, and I'm glad we had a chance to catch up on the matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.